Hey guys. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, just okay. Everything seems correct, I think. Welcome. Happy Tuesday. Today, after a while, I'm going back to endgame sessions, which is nice because they're instructive and people tend to enjoy them a lot. Um, So I probably will start over from the basics at some point, but the topic for today is decided. We're gonna see Rook versus Pawn, which is not the most basic endgame, but still a very concrete one. So I hope it will be instructional. Um, Hello, Flavio. Hello, Captain Kang. What's up, guys? Um, yeah, my plan for, let's say, the long term or mid term is I'm going to cover all the important endgames, theoretical endgames, and probably a lot of material also on uh, compositions as well as practical endgames. But yeah, I want to be thorough on the theoretical part. Um, because endgames is the most important thing to study and is the one that people don't usually study for whatever reason, probably boring to study when you're alone, but people gave great feedback on these streams in the past. I think it's always much easier to study when you do it together. So I think it's a good idea. Anyway, Rook versus Pawn. Why are we doing this? Why that specific topic so random? Well, the other day we had. Let me go to a board editor. The other day we had a puzzle that we discussed on the Discord channel, and let's see if I remember the position. Um, mhm, Trying to remember. So white had a pawn on c6. I'm almost certain. Black had a king over, I think, e8, very likely. White had a rook, maybe on b6 actually, maybe like that. And black had a pawn, probably on g5. And black's rook was probably already on the c file. Trying to remember. Honestly, I'm doing a stupid exercise here of memory while I have it on the Discord. We were discussing that this very week on the Endgames channel. Here it is. Okay, yeah. So the position is this one. Right. Okay. So it's white to play. Let's bring up an analysis board. As you can tell from the database, c6 is the winning move. But I'm gonna hide the database and the stockfish. That's going to be more useful for us. Let me make my camera bigger. Let me check that you can see the full board. All right. So yeah, we had this puzzle the other day and we discussed it a bit. I think it was an interesting one. As the calculation is more or less forcing and it has a nice trick at some point. It's not a very long line also, it's like 4 moves. So I think it's an interesting puzzle. Maybe I can leave it here for a couple minutes. See if you can try to find the solution. This is why to move and win. Some people already thought about this on Discord, so some people already know the solution. But I thought it was cute. I got it, I think, on chess.com. Yeah, why to move and win. What do you think, guys? Anyway, one of the lines, as we will see, ends in a rook versus pawn endgame. And so, yeah, someone on the Discord thought it would be an easy win when it was actually a theoretical draw. So I think it's a good thing that we go over that specific theoretical endgame. That's why I decided to do this session this week. And also because I have material prepared for that, so that helps. What do you think, guys? Anyone there? I see the chat either too quiet or maybe it's not refreshing for me. I guess I'll read Twitter in the meantime. I'll give you a couple minutes. Levkono, thanks for the follow. Sorry, I just got the notification on the phone. Hearing with a lot of attention. Go. It's white to play and win. If anyone has any idea. C6, that's a very nice guess, yeah. Also, I think we already saw that C6 was a winning move at the beginning, but yeah. Let's put some... Let's put some moves on the board. So yeah, C6, definitely one of a very, very normal candidate move. This is a pawn race, after all. It's a pawn race because we're equal material, we both have pawns, we're 3 moves away from promotion, our opponent is 4 moves away. Well, C6 is definitely a very logical move. Obviously, there are some tricks and things to consider because we have a rook. Rook d6, I don't know if you're meaning c6 rook d6 or if you mean rook d6 for white, which by the way was suggested also on the Discord, the move 1 rook d6. It's funny because it is indeed a winning move, except for the wrong side. Yeah, rook d6 would be a way to lose. Rook d6, you trade, king d7, and now black wins. So yeah, rook d6, not a good idea. But c6, definitely a good idea, right? We're getting close to promotion, and actually we have, our king is helping the pawn very much to promote, so it's really hard for black to... black can't just run. After c6, black can't just start running because we're gonna get a queen with check. So definitely c6, very strong move. Other moves could come to mind, like rook g6, but yeah, it's only normal to explore c6 first, which is actually the winning move. So let's make it mainline c6. And here, well, again, black can't afford to just start running. Black needs to do something defensive here. And so the logical move to consider, I think, is rook c4. We could think, okay, maybe we wait for c7 to play rook c4, so we can play g4, and after c7, rook c4, but then you see rook c6, and the checks are useless, right? Let's put it on the board. If you delay rook c4, then white has rook c6, and it's game over. There's no way to stop the promotion. And the checks, again, are completely useless, because at some point you run out of checks. Yeah. And for example, speaking of rook versus pawn, this rook versus pawn would be winning for white. It is winning for a number of reasons, but since we're here and it's the topic of today, let's see how would we win this. How would you win this? Anyone? King f7. Here I have, I'm sure many moves win. Well, king f7 is trying to help the pawn, obviously, but it's also preventing rook g8. And here there's like a very, 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 very simple way to win. And then there's the caveman approach, who also probably wins. Yeah. How would you do it here? Still rook c4. Yeah. Yeah, rook c4. You hit the pawn. The pawn cannot be defended in time. And the pawn has to push. Then you go after it. Super simple. By the way, this is... since we're here, yeah, this position is completely winning. Like, you don't even need to know much or calculate much. But since we're here and you know, we're exploring the topic of rook versus pawn, just another problem. I'm gonna do a stupid move as white. I'm gonna play this check and allow king f6, and now I'm gonna ask again, how would you win here? Now we wasted a tempo, and now, for example, if we go rook c4, our opponent is in time to defend the pawn. So now rook c4 would be probably a mistake. But there's still a very simple way to win here. Very simple. Rook c5. Very nice, Flavio. Rook c5. And this is probably the first thing, I would say, the first thing you need to know about rook versus pawn. So it's nice that we got to this position, because this was completely not planned. Actually, this line I didn't think would happen. But yeah, one of the very first things you need to know about rook versus pawn is if the king is cut far away from the from helping the pawn promote, like in these last three ranks. That's far away. That's far away from helping the promotion. If you cut the king there, that's it. That's just a win. So with the rook on the 5th rank, cutting the opponent's king, it's a win. Why is it a win? Because if the pawn never pushes, because you know the king is like one move away from defending the pawn, but we're preventing it. But so black may say, okay, I'm gonna stay with the king here. So if given the chance, I'm gonna go help the pawn. Okay, so if the pawn never pushes, we just go with the king. Simple. And whenever the pawn pushes, then now these are far away from each other. So now we do the operation of attacking the pawn. The pawn can't be defended, has to be pushed, and we're just in time. So rook c5, very simple way to win in this position. Anyway, let's go back to the puzzle. So all of this came if black delayed the move rook c4, and it's definitely not working because here rook c6. So that means that black needs to try rook c4 here on the very first move after c6. So c6 rook c4 would be the main line. And now this is an interesting moment, because this is where the puzzle is a puzzle. If it was as simple as pushing the pawn, it wouldn't be a puzzle. But here's the thing: if we push the pawn now, okay, Flavio thinks still c7, but c7 doesn't win here, and that's unfortunate. But definitely a move, probably the first candidate move you would think of. c7, obviously, we're trying to promote. Now, there's only one move for black, because we're threatening to promote, we're threatening also rook c6, so the only move to consider is king d7. And the problem is king d7 actually works for black. It prevents c8, it prevents rook c6, and it also threatens rook takes pawn with a check, so it's actually pretty annoying, king d7. Yeah. And it is a draw, but now it's white who needs to to actually make the draw, because we're losing a pawn on c7. So now it's us who need to start defending, and you know, be careful, because black is going to be a pawn up here, and yeah, after king d7, it's not not so simple. So so c7 doesn't win. But we still need to do something useful. Our king is, I want to say, perfect on b7, covering c7, c8, defending c6. So it's time to move our rook, right? There's probably one move that's most logical, which is rook b5. It hits the pawn. Other moves are maybe less logical. Bringing the rook to the a6 square could be possible. Could be another idea, but it's a bit too slow. But yeah, the idea of bringing rook a8 check, then after c7, king d7, we have rook d8 check. So I understand that potentially also an idea, but at the very least, black can check and go back to c4. Is king c7 with rook b8 slow? Yeah, that's also slow. But that's also an interesting idea. The problem is here we're not going to win just because we have Lucina, which, by the way, Lucina is another thing we have to see at some point. Not today, but maybe we should. Rook and pawn versus rook is another endgame that it's very important. So we're gonna have to see that probably another day. But yeah, applying Lucina, just having the king in front of the pawn and then doing the maneuvers with a rook, that's working usually when the opponent doesn't have a pawn. But here black has a pawn, so then Lucina is not gonna serve us to win. If we go, let's say, king c7 and our opponent, let's say, starts pushing, we do the check, the king gets out. Actually, in this case, maybe I even go king f7 just to prevent rook g8, just to make white's life harder. But the point is, when your opponent has a pawn, Lucina, you cannot just build the breach and win. There's obviously still tricky stuff from this point, but yeah, as a general rule, this would not be winning. In fact, this may give us the chance to go over rook versus pawn already, because how do you even make progress here as white? I guess you would do this. I would do that, but then this pawn starts pushing. Oh, rook b3. You go rook b3. But then how are you gonna win? Let's say I go king e6, which is a dual purpose move. Well, it mainly has one purpose. Is I'm starting to run with the king to help the pawn. The point is my rook is ready to be sacrificed for the pawn. So I want to build a king and pawn versus rook that will actually be enough for a draw. So yeah, I guess king b7 here. Rook g3. Okay, rook g3. Let's try rook g3. I'm gonna go there, and the rook in front of the pawn is really badly placed, and I'm so ready to capture, to sacrifice my rook on c6. So I can see how this is already a draw if if white doesn't do anything stupid. Yeah. So so yeah, this is not the way to win. I would expect maybe here you can try king d7 and try to be more direct instead of going rook b3, rook g3 and wasting so many tempi. But yeah, g3, and now you need to be careful. So maybe rook b3. And now, for example, g2 would lose the pawn to, sorry, rook f3 check, rook g3 check, rook takes g2. So as black, I need to make a decision here. Probably I would do the check, push, the king has to go in front. But here rook g4, and now it's this rook needs to go here, and that's a very passive rook on g1. Yeah, I don't know. This is probably just a draw, because probably white needs to start checking here. and this pawn is too close to promoting. Maybe this wasn't the easiest way to draw, but it should be a draw. I don't see a move for white here that doesn't draw immediately, or that doesn't repeat this same position. Yeah. King b8 maybe, but again, this is a check. If you want to keep the pawn alive, we have to repeat the same position. Well, I mean, black can try rook b2, but there's no need to. Yeah, this should be a draw. And this was just one way where we pushed the pawn to g3, and white went to attack it. But maybe black can also, let's say here, another idea for black could be to run with the king to help the pawn. It may not be the cleanest, but it should be enough, because rook g8 can be met with king f5 right now. So yeah, let's say something like this, for example. And this is the kind of endgame we're gonna see today. We're gonna see the different cases to understand that, for example, this one is a draw. I think it's pretty obvious that this one is a draw. I think black has like 2 or 3 tempi ahead of the critical scenario where this would be a draw. Black is completely like, black has everything to make a draw here. The opponent's king too far away. Its own king on the right side of the pawn. We're going to talk a bit about this today. And this is a draw. So that leads us to probably the solution. We were trying king c7, rook b8. Very similar ideas with the plan of rook a6. So the logical move here, okay, maybe it's not so logical because you need to see the continuation, but another logical move to consider is rook b5, which is actually the solution. Let's make this the main line, which hits the pawn on g5. Now, I think there's no other logical move here for black but pushing the pawn to g4, because you don't really want to remove the rook from behind white's pawn. So we're not going to play rook g4, would be like the most awful move you can play, rook g4. Like removing the rook from the c file, blocking the pawn, yeah, makes no sense. So the only way to preserve this pawn is g4, and because this pawn is very well defended, it looks like we're going to have to sack a rook for it. We need to keep the g pawn alive. So yeah, g4 only move for black. And now here comes the nice part of the puzzle, because we need a trick here to be able to win. We may ask ourselves why c7 doesn't work, because now king d7 we may have rook d5 check. So c7 is definitely one candidate move, and then there's the other one, the one that wins. So c7 doesn't win, unfortunately. I'm doing this without the database, without the engine, so I may say some things wrong, but this is why we're here. We're all here to use our brains, and hopefully we will check and double check stuff and not make mistakes. But c7, I know it doesn't win, so but I never explored the line. So let's see what happens with c7. I think king d7 is the way. Well, it stops promotion, it threatens rook takes c7, and now if rook d5 check, I think we can go king e6, hitting the rook. And the point is, the way we're gonna save this as black is to go into that rook versus pawn endgame. We're gonna sacrifice a rook for the c pawn whenever necessary. For example, if rook d8 It's not necessary yet. Rook g5 to sacrifice rook later. Okay, rook g5, interesting. Oh, instead of the check, you mean here rook g5? That would make some sense. Before. Oh, before c7? Here rook g5? Yeah, that also makes sense. So let me show, let's show three things. Let's show c7 and rook d5 check. Then I'm going to show c7 and rook g5. And then finally we're going to see rook g5 first. None of them win, okay? But I think in this order is going to be the cleanest. So, because you have rook g7 if king d7. Yeah, that's also a good idea. So c7, rook d7. If rook d5, I think king e6 makes a draw. If you go rook d8, we can just start running. That king and pawn is going to be enough to draw against the rook. If rook g5 here, there's king f6 because the pawn on g4 is still defended. Except I missed this, so maybe that's not it. Right? So okay. So I guess here we need to start checking, or maybe king e6 was a mistake, but how could king e6 be a mistake? Oh, it could be a mistake. No, the king was on d7. Maybe king d7 was a mistake. Wait, what? Oh, king d7 after rook g5? Wait a second, but that allows this. And this is a win for white. So I think, here's what I think. I think king d7 is wrong in this line. And maybe I'm wrong. But I think you have to go king e6 or king f7. Probably king e7. So that if you try to build rook c6, we have still access to d7. But my point is after rook g5, I'm not in time. I wanted to start checking, but I'm not in time. So wait a second. Oh, I found a coin. Nice. Cool. Okay. We're messing this up. King d7. We're seeing rook d5 check, but rook g followed by rook g5, but it's more or less the same. If rook g5, I think we start checking. Well, actually, this check is already a draw. So this is a resource that white needs to avoid because c7 hangs here. So I think it makes sense to go to d7, but you have to do the check, and then if king e6, rook g5. Now, if we don't play king e6, I don't know what we're gonna play. So I guess king e6, rook g5. Now we start checking. If king c6 check again, if you build the bridge here, we're in time to take on king d7, so no bridge here. And you need to keep an eye on the pawn, so king b6 or king b7. Now the check here will allow that, but king d7 with access to c8 may work here. And this is tricky, because at first sight this could seem like winning, but it's not. Because we run. We're always gonna sack the rook for the pawn as long as we have this king and pawn versus rook. So if that doesn't win, I guess the point is not to allow the king on b7 in these lines. So we check, we check. And if the king is on b6, then yes, king d7. If the king is on b7, we check. And what else can white try? If he puts the king in front of the pawn, then there's no longer the trick rook takes g4. So yeah, I think this is the way to draw. But for a second we were messing up, and I guess that's the answer against c7, both if rook d5 and rook g5. So the other thing we were discussing is, what if rook g5 first before playing c7? And I know this is not the solution either, so I know this doesn't win, but let's see. I guess the idea is going to be very similar for us. We're going to try and get to the same kind of position. So I think one way we could do it is playing king e7 here, or actually, is king d8 a blunder? King d8 may work, right? And if check king here, no, it doesn't work actually. Yeah, king d8 seems like a blunder. So I would go king e7. King e7, and the point is to meet c7 with the checks. The other line we had exactly the same resource, except with the king on e6. I think there's no difference between having the king on e6 or on e7. We're going to check and go back to c4. As long as the king goes back to b7. If the king goes back to b7, we're going to keep checking. If the king goes anywhere else, we're going to play king d7. If king c6 check king b6, we're going to go king d7. This is a draw. We already discussed this. So yeah, the point is not to stay in this position and allow the king to stay on b7. We always check on b4 in this case. And actually the king is better on e7 than on e6. This is a funny thing. With the king on e6, there's a trick for white that we didn't see in the other line. So we may have messed up the other line with the king on e6. The line was, let me go back to that line because I just discovered something. Let's go back to the line c7, king d7, rook d5 check. Because I just discovered something. This is going to be very funny. You'll see. I think king e7 is correct, and we were playing king e6, but I think I just found a trick for white if the king is on e6, and the trick is the following trick. It's gonna blow your mind. Rook g5. Here we did the check, right? We did the check because king d7 loses to rook g7 check. So we did the check. We can't afford this king to stay there. Now king c6, we played rook c4 check. Oh, no. This is what's gonna blow your mind. Here, instead of king c6, we play rook b5. Boom. What do you think? The point being that if rook takes king c6, and the point being we promote with a check. With the king on e7, this does not happen because the rook goes down, and promotion, we check and win. So, so here, I guess rook c4 may still be a draw. This may still be a draw because actually rook b6 check can be met with king d7. We already saw this, so there's no way to check and there. So yeah, this may just be a draw, right? Oh, just promote. You're right. You're right. We just promote. It's a win. The king is cut. So rook c4 doesn't work. Okay, so that's funny. That's funny because that means king e6 is a blunder in this position. King e6 is a blunder. We have to play king e7, which is a very nice puzzle. I'm gonna check with the database that king e6 loses, king e7 draws, just to make 100% sure. Oh my god. We're so wrong. King e6 is the only move that draws. Okay, okay, so now with the database on, back to 0, yeah. Let's see what happens with king e6, rook g5, rook b4 check, yes, only move. And now if rook b5, this is a draw? Rook c5, of course, rook c5. By the way, amazingly enough, that's not the only mind blown here. Rook f5, rook g5, and king e7 are draws as well, because apparently that rook and pawn versus queen is a draw. But who would go there? Like, this is a draw. This is a draw. But yeah, mind blown again. Yeah, rook c5 is a draw. So king e7 loses, by the way, here. King e7 loses because we promote, obviously. Obviously. Okay, so let's go back to this position. Now hide the database. And the probabilities you play perfectly every move to draw are, yeah, very, very, very small. Yes. Okay, so funny. So c7, it's a draw theoretically, but anything can happen. And rook g5 first leads. I think we saw that already, right? Yeah, we were actually seeing that when I thought about this rook b5, which is a nice trick, honestly. Anyway, so this leads to similar positions. Here king d8 is a bad move, but we thought king e7. But now that I saw the king on e7 didn't quite help, maybe we need to start checking. Let's briefly ask the database. The database likes both to draw. Rook b4 check and king e7. So I guess they both will lead to something similar to what we saw. Or the same. I'm a bit confused about king e7. I suppose after c7 we start checking? Or we play king f... No, king f6, rook takes g4. So we need to start checking here, right? There's no other option. So we start checking. Yeah, and it's the same idea as before. If the king stays out of b7, we're gonna play king d7. Like for example, in this line, we're gonna play king d7. That's a draw. And otherwise we keep checking. And here there's no trick here. In fact, here black wins. So yeah, don't do rook b5. Okay, so this doesn't win either, which leads us to the winning move here. It's not c7, it's not rook g5. the winning move is the simple move, the move a beginner would play. You see a check, you play a check. So we do the check. Let's make this the main line. I actually like checks in endgames. It's sometimes checks are really bad, as you know, when you improve your opponent's king, and sometimes they're really good, as when you make the opponent, uh, you know, do a decision that they don't want to do. This is a tough spot for Black's king right now, because actually the e file was a nice file. Now the Black king needs to either go to d8 or go too far away from the c pawn, and that will not help in those lines um, where white can try to build a bridge, because if the king is away from the d7 square, then that would just be a win for white. So basically black is forced to go to d8 here, king d8. Again, that's going to be the main line. Let's say we try to go to the f file. Then now pushing the pawn is a different story, because first of all the king is cut, so rook, I mean the rook sacrifice does not work. So here as black we need to start checking. I mean, what else? I mean, we could try g3, but the king is cut. The pawn is still not further enough. So we need to start checking here, but it was different when the king could go to d7. Now that it can't go to d7, we can go here, check, and I think here we can build the bridge directly. There's no way to prevent the promotion. But we could also do this, because there's no king d7. And after the check here, then okay, here there's still this, I guess. So eventually you're gonna have to build a bridge, but yeah, with the king so far away, the bridge will work. So the point of the check is to force the king to a really bad spot, or to d8, which is another bad spot. And the reason why d8 is a bad spot is, dun, 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 what's the winning move here? Check again. Hey, cycling box, what's up? Yeah, if you check again, I assume I was gonna say I assume it's still winning. Rook e4, very nice, Flavio, to bring rook down. If you check again, it's probably winning still, and then you can do rook d4, the same trick. No, you can't. You can't. Yeah. So if you check again, the problem is king e7. That's the thing I'm not sure. If king goes back to e8, you can repeat. But if king e7, rook check, there's the additional king f6 that I don't know what's happening. Are we winning here or not? But yeah, Flavio already said rook e4, which is the idea. You were thinking rook d7 check. Oh no, but that's exactly what you don't want to do. You probably arrived now and missed all the analysis we we discussed earlier. When if this king gets to help the pawn, which by the way I would do it like this to prevent being cut. If this king is in time to help the pawn, we're gonna have a completely drawn rook versus pawn once we sacrifice our rook for the c pawn. Like let's say here rook there, king f5, and yeah, the king is gonna run with the pawn, and when we need it, probably on the next move, we're gonna sacrifice our rook for a pawn, and it's gonna be a draw. So so yeah, that's not the idea. And well, as Flavio said, rook e4, very nice move. Make main line. Actually, the puzzle stopped here once you play rook e4. Puzzle solved. the point is, if the rook moves on the c file, hey, Chess Viking Wales, it's gonna be an easy win because rook takes pawn, and then even if we get pushed away, we're gonna have Lucina here at some point. And if rook takes rook, the point of bringing the king to d8 is that we have c7 check c8, and funnily enough, this queen versus rook and pawn is winning, unlike the other one that we saw that it was a draw. So still not super easy to win. I mean, you still will need to do some work with the queen versus the rook, but yeah, thankfully the puzzle stopped here. Cool. So yeah, since we discussed already several lines where we ended up in this rook being sacrificed for this pawn, and whether this rook can stop this pawn or not, whether it's a win or a draw, now that's the perfect introduction for the topic of today, which is rook versus draw. The other was draw, but engine only. Yeah. And this one, pum 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 here. Yeah, this one is going to be a win. I would say not engine only. That's the thing about queen versus rook, or queen versus rook and pawn, which is a bit trickier. It is a theoretical win. Let's forget about the pawn, okay? Because that depends a lot where the pawn is. But queen versus rook, in general, is an endgame that I recommend not to study. I mean, just study the typical position. Let me actually, since we're discussing it, let me bring it up on a board. You know, I like going from one endgame to another. I'm like that. So let's say it's white to move here. Analysis board. If black had 2 pawns connected, I think I could draw it, but still a lot to calculate. Yeah, maybe. It depends where the pawns are. Okay, so this position, if you ever decide to study queen versus rook, this is the one position you need to know. This is the one position you need to know in queen versus rook. Just study that. This is the only thing you need. Now, if you intend to beat an engine in this endgame, I mean not this position you can, but in general in queen versus rook, if you intend to beat an engine, then you will have to study much more. You will have to study weeks. It's a very complicated endgame. The difference between checkmate in 24 and checkmate in 42 can be like a little inaccuracy. So you're not going to beat an engine from a normal position, queen versus rook, in less than 50 moves. So you're going to get a draw. But against a human, always 100% win. I promise. That's why I say that you shouldn't study it, because in human practice, it's really hard to defend with the rook. So yeah, I wouldn't study much. Now this position, once you know the king is in the corner, once you get to this position, this is the only one that you need to know. The one trick you need to know is this is a mutual 6-1 position, so you need to get to the same position with the turn for black. So for example, one way to do it could be check here. The king must go to the to one of those squares, because if it goes there, it's checkmating one. So let's say it goes here. Now we check here. If the rook blocks, there's a checkmate in one. So the king will go there again, and now you triangulate it. You did a triangulation, now it's black to move. So this is just one thing you need to know about queen versus rook. This specific position, that if you reach it, you have to do this triangulation, and now wherever the rook moves, it's going to be too far away. So you're going to have a sequence of checks to capture the rook. Like right now the rook can't move. The rook needs to move, and it's going to be a really bad situation for the rook. Notice that you can't move the king either, because we can just spin it. So the rook needs to go to one of those 7 squares, and you always will have a sequence of 2 or 3 checks to end up capturing the rook. Always, always um, working with the forks and the back ranks. Like, I don't know, if let's say the rook goes here, you start checking. It doesn't, well, in this case there's this check. Okay, that was the easiest one. Let's say the rook goes there. Um, then you can centralize. Usually that's the shortest path, so that's good. And if king here, this is mate, so the king needs to go there. And yeah, even in a position like this, you can always play with this check, for example, the fact of the back rank mate, that if the rook blocks, you have a back rank mate. So in this case, the king will need to move and you have your fork already. There's always a sequence of 2 or 3 moves to do a fork, so you can solve it over the board. You don't need to know them case by case. But again, this is the one position you need to know. And against a human opponent, you probably capture the pawn. You probably captured the rook already before you get to this position. But if you ever get to this position, this is the one thing to know. And yeah, in human practice, you don't need to know more than this, because again, it's really hard to defend against an engine. Against an engine, knowing this is not enough, because to get here, it's what's difficult. Um, but anyway, um, now let's move to the topic of today, finally, which is rook versus pawn. So we saw that sometimes we can draw, sometimes it's a win for the rook, and sometimes it's a win for the pawn. We're gonna cover all of that today, and thankfully I have a study for this already. So my studies, rook versus pawn. There you have it. It's a public study, so yeah, uh, it's already ready. I'm gonna just follow it, but yeah, we'll discuss position by position. As I say here, this is a very important ending, since rook and pawn endgames are the most common in practice. So yeah, rook and pawn endgames are the most common in practice for a number of reasons, but mostly because we have a lot of pawns. So it's very common to have pawns in the endgame, and also the rooks. The rooks, are the last pieces to enter the party. And okay, sometimes you trade them all in the middle game, but if you don't trade your rooks, there's many chances that they make it to an endgame. Following Carana's game right now, always funny to me when Super GM plays King F8 and not castling and pushing pawns left and right. Cool. We may have a look at that later. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. The US Championship being played right now. I'm sure there are interesting games in there. So again, rook and pawn endgames, very important. They're not just very common, but also they're very tricky, really tough. So there's some theory that you need to know, and some other day, not today, we're going to cover king and pawn endgames for sure. We have time, nice. And then the probably most important endgame is to know about rook and pawn endgames is rook and pawn versus rook, and we're gonna do another day just that one, maybe even more than one day, because even though the topics are more or less simple and concrete, like Lucina, Philidor, first rank defense, long side versus short side, and the attacking techniques and the defensive techniques are very concrete, but people get confused a lot because they're always there in every endgame you study with rook and pawn endgame. You need to consider many different paths, and they lead to different different endgames, different theoretical endgames. And one thing is to know them case by case and just to know them by heart. And a different thing is in practice to manage that knowledge. So it's a very important endgame, Rook and Pawn versus Rook. Probably the most important one, but not the one we're gonna talk about today. Today we're gonna talk about Rook versus Pawn. And as we saw from the puzzle we started with, many times in pawn races, you end up having to sacrifice your rook for a pawn that's promoting, and then you get into this rook versus pawn. Um, Maybe some of the day we cover other pieces versus pawn, like knight versus pawn and queen versus pawn, are also very important to know, and they always come for the same reason as rook versus pawn. They always come from a pawn race when someone has to sacrifice a piece for the promoting pawn, and then you remain. Then you're left with a pawn versus the opponent's piece. Um, so yeah, queen versus pawn and knight versus pawn are also very important to know. Bishop versus pawn is stupidly simple, so you shouldn't study that. I have a study from BZ, another chess streamer, with rook endgames, and have those names. I don't think I was ready to understand it. I think I can understand it more now. Oh, nice. Yeah, I think probably, this week on my chess lesson with my Friday lesson with my students, my most advanced students, we're gonna go again because we've been over this many times, but we're gonna review again rook and pawn versus rook. So I'm gonna have it fresh. It's probably a good topic for next week for the stream. Yeah, so probably next week I'll do that. And because we're gonna have this rook versus pawn completely mastered today, this is gonna help us for that, maybe. Okay, so hey Blaze, thanks for the follow. Welcome. You're just in time. We're just starting with rook versus pawn. Okay, so as a general rule, next week I won't remember anything. Okay, let's try to explain. Thankfully, it's not a very complicated topic, rook versus pawn. So hopefully we're going to go over it or explain it in such a clear way that it's impossible to forget. Possibly, I mean, I think the only tricky case. Okay, maybe there's a couple tricky cases, but yeah, I would say bishop's pawn. The bishop's pawn is the trickier case, probably. But for the most part, the ideas are very straightforward. It's more than memory, learning concepts and few key moments to be aware. Yeah. So um, I'm not gonna go over this intending that you memorize it. Um, that memorizing things doesn't just happen in a session. That anybody can go over them over and over and memorize them. And the study is public. I'll share it, the link at the end as well. But yeah, my point is to try to explain the ideas. So at least we know the ideas, and whenever we're faced with this endgame, we know what to look for. We know what's important and what not. So in this first chapter, I explain the most basic skill or the most basic idea of the endgame, of this particular endgame, which I think is the basic idea of chess. Is that if you don't know something, then you calculate it. so if you don't know anything about rook versus pawn, you can at least try to calculate it. And the arrows here show the tempi that you can calculate. So if you count the arrows, you can see how black needs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves to actually get a queen, assuming that the king is going to need to help promote. So you need 5 moves to promote the pawn with the help of the king. And white needs 1 move from the rook and another 4 from the king to get to the ideal position where the king and the rook control the promotion square. So in this case, it's a tie, 5 and 5. That means that if it's white to move, white wins, and if it's black to move, it's a draw. This is an easy case. This is an easy case where we can actually count. And in many cases, we can just count. And it can be, it's almost geometrical. I mean, you don't, the same way we use the rule of the square when a king is trying to stop a pawn from promoting. Here it's something very similar, except you probably have to count, or it's easier to count. I think for me it's easier to count, but at least you need to know the goal. The goal is to have the king and the rook controlling the promotion square. So that's logical, right? Usually you want the rook behind the pawn, because the rook behind the pawn is incredibly useful for some edge cases. But I have to say that here, for example, having the rook on e1 would also work. Okay, as long as the rook defends the promotion square, it also works. Like if you imagine the king on d2 and the rook on c8, it's going to be the same as having the king on d2 and the rook on e1. It's going to stop the promotion. So yeah, if you didn't know anything about this endgame, you will have to calculate it. Thankfully, the ideas are very straightforward, as in black has only one pawn. so black's plan is going to be push the pawn and help with the king, and white has only a rook, so yeah, the plan is going to be run to stop the promotion and put the rook behind the pawn. So the ideas are pretty straightforward. We're going to just see some cases where it's not going to be so straightforward for some reasons, like shouldering the king and things like that. But yeah, in general, in many cases you can just calculate, as this, for example. In this case, it's white to move. That means that white arrives just in time. So we can see the line. This is not very complicated. King g5, king f4, rook c8, king e3, king d2. We're just in time. Now, there's one thing to mention here. So let's go all the way back, and I think that's what I mentioned in the on the next chapter, and it's about a defensive resource that black has, but black doesn't have it if we start with king g5. So we're gonna play king g5, king f4, king e3. We're gonna put the rook behind the pawn. The first question is, why don't we start with rook c8 and then we approach with our king? Well, that's a mistake. So in my opinion, in general, as a general rule, you want to bring the king first and leave the rook move for the last responsible moment. So whenever you need to put the rook behind, you put it behind. For example, in this line that we saw, we're completely running with the king, run with the king, and when the pawn is about to promote or threaten something, then we go with the rook. Okay, and then we stop it. Now the rule will, as we'll see, it doesn't apply 100% of the cases, but as a general rule, you want to improve your king as soon as possible. And because if your king is in a bad situation, you will give your opponent more resource to draw, as we will see hopefully on the next chapter, which is the same position, but we start with the blunder rook c8. And rook c8 does not win. And the reason it doesn't win is it gives black the chance to implement a defensive resource, which is an amazing move. This could be a puzzle, but except you're seeing the move on on the right side. But if this was a puzzle, it would be a good one to refresh your theoretical knowledge. Black to move and draw, and the move is king c3 exclamation mark, because the idea is we bring the king to the other side of the pawn. It's easy to understand, yeah. So the idea is to shoulder. I think this is called shouldering, or in Spanish we say codeo, which I assume in Portuguese maybe also codeo. Codeo. How do you call this part of the body? Is this a codo? Codo? I don't know. In Spanish it's codo. Cut off the white king to get closer. It's not codo. Cotovelo. Cotovelo. Yeah, that makes sense. Ooh. Then I guess I would say maybe I would translate shouldering as hombreo. Hombreo? Hombreo? Like hombro. In Spanish we say, I think in soccer they say hombreo. Hombro contra hombro. Something like that. Anyway, you understand. So shouldering is we're gonna put our king, instead of helping the pawn on this side, we're gonna try and help the pawn from this other side, and that will make this king's life tougher, because if we went on this side, the king only needs to reach d2. But if we go on this side, the king will need to reach b2, which is like no way. Black wants to draw, so king c3 makes perfect sense. Yeah. So we're gonna keep this king completely away from controlling the promotion square. Like, it will take forever to get to the b2 square. So this is a draw. This is gonna be a draw. Yeah. So this is the very first thing to understand, and not very complicated, but it's important. So again, I would improve the king first as a general rule, and use the rook only when we need to use the rook. And hopefully the rook will only need one move. Sometimes it needs more. Okay, this is just a chapter dedicated to the fact that Max Euwe, I don't know how to pronounce that. If any Dutch person is in the chat, they will know. I know this is a tough one to pronounce, but the world champion Max Euwe determined that white draws if the king is on one of the red squares and wins in any other case. As long as we can count, we don't really need to know all of that. In this position, the count still works because despite the kings being in the same file, black's king is not in time to annoy white's king. Okay, so in this position, white's rook is already controlling the promotion square. That helps because we may not need to move the rook at all if we can arrive with our king, which is the case here. In German language, W reads V. Dutch is very Dutch phonetics are very complicated compared to German phonetics. James' birthday, hello. If you need real blah 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 blah. Oh, okay. Give me a second. I'll give you my feedback to you, James. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So yeah, I don't know how to pronounce. Looked for a moment. Bamboo stick. Okay, so yeah, this is another example that can be calculated. We need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves to reach d2, and black needs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to reach the ideal position to promote. So it's not gonna have time enough, and that's assuming black goes for the direct approach. If black tries to go in front of the pawn, it's not going to help because our king is really close. But we're going to leave that for another chapter maybe. Or maybe I should do a note that maybe I should cover what happens if king e3. But king e3, our king is already there, so it's actually very simple. Yeah, I don't think we need to go in that detail. Yeah, it's pretty obvious, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna put it here, and maybe I'll just put the line there in the study. if we just get here, now the only logical move is king f3. Because any other move, rook check, and we win the pawn. And rook there, also rook check wins the pawn, because the pawn is pinned, and we win it on the next move. So yeah, this is... yeah, king e3 is not helping. Okay, so this case, for example, is not very difficult to calculate. But the point why I added this chapter, the point is that this champion had studies, because I'm showing just for this position the winning and drawing zones for depending on where you have the king. But this is for the position with the e4 pawn, king on f4, rook on a1. He had studies for like many different types of initial positions, like different positions of the rook, different positions of black's king, and who could study all of that? Like in the old times, people did this, but I think it's really difficult to study like that. So yeah, I mentioned that because some people may be interested in looking for that material, but I think it's much easier to count when you can count, and when there are certain tricks that mess up with our counting, it's important to know them and to know the techniques around, which is what we're seeing today. Okay, this one we already know, because we discussed earlier today that if we can cut the king, it's game over. If we can cut the king far away from the promotion square, that is, if we cut on the 5th rank or less, or higher, then it's an immediate win, because we're gonna just walk the king if the pawn never pushes, and if the pawn pushes, then we go after it, and the pawn is lost because the king is far from defending it. So this was easy. We don't need to stop here. Now we start reaching to the interesting scenarios. And sorry if I just read the text, but I wrote this text, so I know it's good text to read, so I'm gonna read it. Sorry. Excuse me. So this position is a draw, but there are a couple of subtleties we need to know. White's king can't reach a2. Well, at least not in time. So let's use the counting method. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves for black. You know, to have the king on c2 and promote, it's 5. And for white, only to reach the a2 square with the king b6, king a5, king a4, king a3, king a2, there are 5. Plus the rook move, that's 6. So we're not in time. We're not in time to win. Funny because it's true. So we're not in time here. If we use the counting method, we're not in time to reach the a2 square. So that mechanism of just playing king b6, king a5, king a4, bring the rook to b8, it's not gonna work. We're not in time. And actually, I don't even... Oh yeah, I have that line here. So let's see that line. Let's see how it doesn't work. King b6, king there, rook there, king here. We're not in time. King a3. I don't know why I put king a3 in the line, but obviously b1 equals queen, rook takes and draw. So this is a draw if we just do the straightforward method. So instead of the straightforward method, we can try another method. We can try the pushing method, which is something you can do when you have the kings like they are, opposed, and black's king goes ahead. But we can try this method. Check. King must go forward. King really doesn't want to go in front of the pawn because it blocks the pawn. We just attack it with the king and we win it. So king c3 only move. King c3 only move. Now we keep moving forward with the king. Then b3 only move, because otherwise we win the pawn, right? So this is all forced, and our hope is we're gonna do this procedure on, and black has forced moves, And when we do it on the back rank, it's checkmate, right? It's a good theory. So we're gonna keep doing this. Check. If this was the back rank, it would be a checkmate. The problem is if this was the back rank, the b pawn wouldn't be a pawn. That's what we're gonna see, right? So we keep doing the same. We keep doing the same. And in this position, the obviously only move for black that doesn't lose is to underpromote to a knight. So this is an important resource to know. Both things are important to know: the pushing method, but also to know that the way it doesn't win is because black can underpromote to a knight. If you promote to anything else that doesn't make a check, then rook h1 is mate. So you have to underpromote to a knight. CJ, hey, thanks for the follow, welcome. And we all should know how to make a draw here. So I'm not gonna include this in this study, but do you all know how to make a draw with rook versus knight? Let me copy the fang and maybe bring it up in another analysis board, just to very briefly explain this. Open link, new tab. Probably not. Okay, and analysis board. Okay, here it's black to move. There's one thing to know when you have king and knight versus king and rook. And I don't know, people sometimes fail this, which I find, and people sometimes get worried about getting into this. So my general advice for this endgame is you need to know just one thing, and that's all you need to know. And the one thing is keep your knight close to your king. That's the only one thing you need to know. Victorian rating, welcome! Welcome, Raiders. Knight a3 only move, yes. In this particular position, knight a3 only move. And you know, some people don't like being on the knight side of this endgame, but I find it's like the most easy endgame, or one of the most easy endgames, because you know it's a draw. You know what you have to do, which is keep the knight close to your king as much as possible. And then the calculations are always super easy, because in many circumstances, like this one, there's only one move. Like there's only one move. Like everything else either loses the knight or gets checkmated. In this case, king d1 gets checkmated, knight d2, knight c3 lose the knight. So it has to be knight a3. So yeah, people feel uncomfortable in this endgame, but if you have the confidence that you know it's a theoretical draw, I tell you, 9 times out of 10, or maybe 8 times out of 10, or 80% of your moves are going to be forced moves like this one. So it's not really that hard. It's not really that hard. And when you have a choice, just bring the knight close to your king. Like if black spends a tempo, just bring it back to b1. And of course they can move around, they can try to trick you, but the only thing to know, you really need to know, is bring the knight, keep the knight close to your king. Then you will not have trouble. Yeah, if you don't know it, it's completely understandable to feel insecure. But if you know it's a draw, I tell you from practice that many times you will have only moves. That said, it's when you have the king the king in a side on the edge of the board already. If you have the king on the edge of the board, is when you start having only moves. But as long as your knight is close to your king, you're fine. If your king is not on the edge of the board, it's even easier. It's like there's no way to win. Like, just don't lose the knight. Don't lose the knight, and you're fine. Now, if we move this position one square to the left, if the knight was on the corner, then you would lose. then you would lose. So that's another thing to know, that your knight should not go to a1. But honestly, from this position, it would be even difficult to bring it to a1. Just don't bring the knight into a corner. But yeah, just know, keep the king close. If it was me as white, let's say after let's say rook g2, for example, knight back to b1, I could try this. I would maybe try this. Right? I'm preventing knight a3. So you can do this kind of move if you have the rook, the side of the rook, that will annoy black. But again, it's an easy draw because you only have one move that makes sense. You will always find the right move by elimination, and with the confidence that it's a theoretical draw, you should be fine. So again, here knight e3 loses the knight, knight c3 loses the knight, knight d2 loses the knight. So the only move came there. There's no back rank mate. There's no way. The rook doesn't have time to go to the other side to deliver mate. And if they ping your knight, you go here. There's no way to bring the king closer. So yeah, there's no way to prevent king b2 except repeating the position. It is a draw. It is a draw. You need that confidence to know that it is a draw, and then you're fine, because many times it's going to be just the only move you can play. All right. So going back to a rook versus pawn, that's the one thing to know about this pushing method, that it's good in theory, but it doesn't work thanks to the underpromotion. Which brings us... Oh, I thought I would have... Interesting. Maybe I should put this one earlier. No, that's not it. Okay, interesting, because maybe I should refer to this chapter from the other one. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. See chapter 13. So, 1 second. So we're here, and I say here, we all should know how to make a draw from here, which is nice. If I have white, I will still try it. Most players on my level won't know to promote to a knight. Yeah. Okay, so here in the end, I'm gonna say, and we all know how to make a draw from here, yes. But also note that this wouldn't save the game with a rook pawn. See chapter 13. So we made... What do we do? Should we continue the way the study is, or should I move and show chapter 13 real quick? Maybe I should show this real quick, and then I'll go back there. So yeah, maybe actually I end up reordering the chapters, because I think it makes a lot of sense to show this right after the other. And the point here is we're going to do the same shouldering technique with a rook pawn. Well, first of all, we cannot outflank. We cannot bring the king to the square on the left of a2, because there's no square on the left of a2. So the only way here is this pushing method. And because the pawn is a rook pawn, underpromotion will not help. So let's see it. We do that technique. Check. King here. And now, if you promote to anything that's not a knight, rook h1 mate. Ali Arhavani, thanks for the follow, welcome. And if you promote to a knight, you also lose, because king c3, you're in zugzwang. Remember how in this position, where when the knight was on b1, we had knight a3. Here we don't have knight a3, because we would need to go to the square on the left of a3. That square doesn't exist on this world. So king opposition pushing with rook check method. Long name. Yeah. Let me see. How do I call it here? I don't call it. Yeah, that's good decision, not having a name for it. Maybe we we should come up with a name for it. We should come up with a name for this. Yeah. I don't know. We'll think about it. Pending task to do. Okay, so I probably end up reordering this because I think it makes a lot of sense to show this right before the other, right before this one. And anyway, let's move on from here. Now we're gonna see the technique called outflanking, which we already know what outflanking is. It's to go around with the king. So let me draw arrows here. Outflanking is gonna be this. And then put the rook behind the pawn, or on h1 in this case. So if you count the arrows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus the rook move, that's 7. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's the same. So if it's white to move, white wins. If it's black to move, it's a draw. It is white to move. White to move here. So it's going to be a win. However, I'm confused about the solution I give there. Yeah, exactly. King c7 also works, as I thought. So it's interesting because here I show a solution. I mean, we could go for the straightforward approach that I just painted in arrows, but the solution I'm giving here is rook h5 check, which is an interesting one because the point is, even though we spend a tempo with the rook, by pushing the king away, I mean forward, we shorten our path for the king. So we're not wasting a tempo here, which also makes sense. So in this case, yeah, the example maybe it's not the most instructional, so I'm having second thoughts about. I mean, there's nothing wrong with including this one, but maybe I should explain it more, as I'm explaining it to you right now. You can do the outflanking, and if we count tempi, we're perfectly in the clear for that. But we can also do as in the solution I suggest here, this to shorten the path for the king. Now the king, instead of 6 moves, will need 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's why rook h5 works here. But now instead of, again, doing the push method, I think I'm going to call it the push method, we do the outflanking method. King c6, and we're just in time. Yeah, this is an interesting moment. Here both moves work actually, rook c5 and rook h1. Again, as I said, if you leave the rook move for the last responsible moment, which is now, because the pawn is threatening to promote, then you're fine, and you're usually fine with both moves, the rook behind the pawn or the rook on the first rank. In this case, both work. That's why I painted green arrows. But as a general rule, you want your rook behind. In this case, there's absolutely no problem with having the rook, attacked by the opponent's king because it's defended. The king needs to defend the pawn anyway. And we're just in time to stop the pawn from promoting, collect it, and win. Okay, so this is outflanking, which is more or less the first technique we saw. Hey, thanks Vitorian, thank you for the raid. I hope you had a great stream and have a good night. Okay, let's move on to the next chapter. Actually, I'm gonna make a to-do list here, if you give me a second. I hope nothing important pops up on screen. Okay, that's not incredibly important. So that's good. But yeah, I'm gonna write some notes here. Rook versus pawn. Oh yeah, thanks for the shout out. I think you put it without the at, maybe? Yeah. I wonder why didn't it work with the at? I think I would imagine it should work just with the wrong URL, but okay. Thanks anyway. So yeah, let me write some notes here because we say name for the push method, reorder chapter 13 maybe after chapter 6, I think it was. Yeah, after chapter 6. And the other thing is chapter 7. Chapter 7, explain better difference between 1 king c7, 1 king c7, and 1 rook h5 check. Okay, good. Now we're ready to move on to the next chapter. And this chapter is called shoulder charging. We already saw the defensive resource of shouldering the strong king away. The strong king is the white king. The strong king is usually called the king that has the rook for some reason, because it's the one trying to win. But we already saw how you can shoulder it away. Now we're going to see an interesting idea is the winning side using shouldering themselves. I'm going to read my text again. In this position, black has hopes. Black has hopes for two reasons. One is the rook is in front of the pawn, so black will eventually win a tempo. Like if you imagine black pushing the pawn and the king, at some point king e2, for example, will win a tempo. So that's nice for black. The other reason is black's king is in the proper side of the pawn, shouldering white's king away. However, the position is a win for white. It's still winning. It's a bit in the limit, but it's still winning. And the idea will be to use shouldering. And what is shouldering? Shouldering is putting the kings in opposition and then checking with the rook. So it's kind of a pushing method as well. So we play king g4. Okay, so we're ready to deliver rook e1 check and force black's king either in front of the pawn or behind the pawn. Both places the king doesn't want to be on. So for example, if now black plays d3, which is the main line. No, it's not the main line, sorry. If black plays d3, which maybe we can include that line here, we would do the check, the king is forced behind the pawn, and now if we count tempi, or we don't need to count, we're in time. We're in time because it will need 1, 2, 3 moves, and in 3 moves we're gonna be so ready. For example, here you can start with d2 or king c3. There's not much of a difference, but yeah, the point is we just stay away from the tempo and we're in time. Here even king e3 works. Even king e3 we're in time. Are we in time? No, king c2. Yes, we're in time. We're on time. Because now we play rook anywhere on the first rank. So yeah, forcing the king, that's a really terrible square. And what we use here is shouldering. Kings in front of each other, we deliver the check. Which would also happen with the king, with the rook behind, right? So this position intentionally starting with a very bad rook for us, but still working. Like rook in front of the pawn is a bad idea in general, but it's still working because we use the shouldering. So after king g4, black can still try king e3. Makes more sense than d3. And now, for example, the check would not work because of king f2. Let me remove that line that we saw, keep the static clean. So we go king g3, setting it up for the shouldering again. Um, if we check here, there's no shouldering anymore, so king f2 can be played, and that's shouldering our king away. So black is ready to start pushing the pawn. If we go like rook h1 or rook a1, black will just start pushing the pawn. And if we attack the pawn, black repeats the position. So rook e1 not a way to make progress. But we play king g3 instead. And again, rook e1 check is a threat. There's not much black can do because black doesn't really want to move the king here. King e4 makes no sense, and king e2 loses the pawn. So the only move that makes sense here is d3, and we're ready to apply the shouldering technique. Just push the king either to d4, which is a very bad spot, or in this case to d2, which wins a tempo against a rook. No, because we're in time to defend the rook. So we're actually using this tempo to bring the king, and as the arrow suggests, our next move is going to be king e3 because black king has to go to the c file, and we're totally in time. So shouldering, important technique, also for the attacking side. You do it from a side, and that way you're going to force the black's king in this case either in front of the pawn or behind the pawn, which is bad. So yeah, important technique. And now let's see this chapter, which is called time gaining check. And I think this is probably the last idea or concept, the last important concept to know and to remember as a general rule. I think it's a very good general rule to remember. And I'm gonna say it straightforward for you before we go into the example, is whenever your opponent's king is in the how do I say this in English? Whenever your opponent king is a knight jump away from the pawn, like you see the pawn on g4, the king on f2, it's a knight jump between them. Whenever the opponent's king is a knight jump in front of the pawn, you deliver a check. That's the rule. That's the general rule to remember. Whenever the king is in a position like this, you deliver a check with the rook. Okay? That's the idea you need to remember. Now we're going to see this particular example and understand why. Knight jump measure, nice. Yeah. So the idea why, the basic idea why we want to deliver a check in this position is to ruin that king, because the king is in an ideal spot. It's the ideal spot to help the pawn advance, because the king is controlling the next 3 squares. The next 3 squares the pawn needs to go through. So it's like in a perfect spot. That's the perfect spot for the king. So we want to ruin that. We don't use this tempo to bring our king closer. We first deliver a check with the rook. And sometimes the best check is from behind on f8. Sometimes it's from a side, like on a2. And sometimes it doesn't matter. In general, from behind is more normal. But yeah, sometimes it will depend. Most cases, it doesn't matter. Here, we're going to do it from behind, which is the most normal thing and the first one you should think about. From a side, you would only do it if you can't do it from behind for some reason. So let me read this text. These endgames are usually a race between the kings. We only move the rook when it's strictly necessary. Yeah, we went over that already. And this position is such a scenario. Black's king is an ideal position to support the pawn, and white's king is still far from helping. If we allow g3, it will be an immediate draw. Therefore, the only move that wins is rook f8 check. Rook f8 check. Now, black's king does not want to go in front of the pawn. Okay, black's king doesn't want to go on g3 or g2 or g1 because he loses the pawn immediately. So the only moves that make sense to my eyes are king e3 and king e2. As a general rule, you play king e2. So this is important to know also. If you have the side of the pawn, when they check you try to never put your king in front of the pawn unless strictly necessary. So you do this, and if they go to g8, then you're in time to defend the pawn, which, by the way, is the way to go. And this is one of the reasons to check from behind, is to now play the move rook g8, exclamation mark. The king is forced to go defend the pawn, king f3. And now you compare this with the initial position. We spoiled black's king. The king was on f2, perfect spot. Now it's on f3. And it's still our turn, white's turn. And we managed to put the rook already behind the pawn. That's what we managed to do with this check. So let's rewind and let's see it again. Here, if we go rook g8, g3, draw. It's going to be a draw. Sorry. So instead of going rook g8, which is a draw, or bringing the king, which is a draw, we do the check, king moves, then rook g8. Then black still needs to spend a tempo, moving the king back, king f3. And now we're in time to get our king closer, and we're going to do some shouldering here. We're going to play king d3, and after g3, we use the push method, shouldering method, where the king is forced either to g4 or g2, both of them bad spots. So for example, king g2, king e2. And as I say here, white wins. Yeah, I don't think we need to continue the line. It's pretty obvious that our king arrived, and this is going to be a win. Probably king f3 is going to be our next move. So yeah, very important technique to remember is what I call here the time gain in check. Time gain in check that we should do whenever our opponent's king is in the ideal spot, a knight jump in front of the pawn. Okay, now we know pretty much all the concepts. But here we have another example of time gain in check and shouldering. Shouldering, also called shoulder charging, according to my text. Okay, so here we have a situation where our opponent's king is in the perfect spot. The king is on f2, the pawn on e2, on e4, sorry. Perfect place for the king. We must do a check. And in this particular position, with a rook on a1, we can't do a check from behind. We can't do a check from the front. We only have a check from the side, so we have to do it. Rook a2 check, only move. And after king f3, well, unfortunately we don't have rook e8. We don't have such a move. But we have rook a8. Oops, sorry. We are in time to go there because our king is on h3, so we're ready for the shouldering. So after a3, sorry, after e3, check, king g2, king e2, and we win. Very important. If we don't do this check, black will play e3 next move, and it's going to be a draw. So very important to remember. And it's not very hard to remember, right? Whenever, and I tell you, it's 100% of the time. 100% of the time that your opponent has a king in that perfect situation, with respect to the pawn, we want to do the check. And once you do the check, it's pretty obvious. Here, by the way, the king needs to go back to defend the pawn, because otherwise it will be too far from the pawn. If king f1, we just play king g3. We bring our king and we're perfectly in time. The rook is already controlling e2. So yeah, king f3, we're in time to play rook a8. Okay, so simple. It's simple once you see it, but the concepts, yeah, you need to remember them. They're not very complicated. And once you see the solution, it's like super obvious. But when you're there over the board trying to figure out what's the precise move, um, yeah, it's nice to remember these ideas, which are actually not so complicated. Now, this is a very famous study from Reti, where the rook has is on a very bad spot. The rest of the yeah, I think the rest of the cases I have here are more like tricky, rare scenarios that are cool to know. But I would say that we already went through the ideas that you must have, and the important concepts. So now we're going to see some rare cases, but yeah, nothing that you really must know. But it's cool to understand a bit further the nuances of this. And in time pressure, the night jump, distance, and shouldering helps. Yeah, definitely, right? So this is a cool composition by Reti. It's white to move and wing. We want to wing, and you may have seen this. I'm sure I showed this already on the stream, and it's a very well known composition where the most natural move doesn't win. Where we have to move the rook, obviously, and the most natural move, in my opinion, is rook e1, and that move doesn't win. Why do I say that it's the most natural move? Well, you need to move the rook. You want it as far as possible. That's a general rule that we have for endgames. Rook e1 does not win. Yeah. So rook e1 is very natural to keep it away from the king. And on the other hand, we know in these endgames it's important to control the promotion square. So moves on the e-file make more sense than a move like rook a4, for example, because then we will need an extra tempo to control e1. So indeed, from the three moves, rook e1, rook e2, rook e3, rook e1 is the one that doesn't win. And rook e2 and rook e3 win. Hello, Ivan. And that's what makes this composition famous. And Reti he had very famous, cute compositions like this that bring you important concepts about the endgames, right? I think we all know the most famous study by Reti, which is nothing to do with this, but since we're speaking of Reti, rook e3, yeah, rook e3. Sorry, excuse me. The most well-known study or composition by Reti is the one that shows the geometry of the king, right? I'm sure you all saw this one. Mind prepared to be blown again. Yeah. This one is very famous. It's the most famous composition by Reti. But since we're mentioning Reti, I'm sure you all know this one. It's white to move and draw. And it's funny because if we know the rule of the square, of course I did. Yeah, everybody knows this one, right? The rule of the square says that black is completely controlling this pawn. Of course you did not. Oh, okay. And white is completely far away from stopping this pawn. And yet white draws. White can draw this position. I think if I put the yeah. Sometimes I have doubts whether the pawn is on h6 or h5, but it's on h5. Yeah, it seems like too far, and it's still a draw. So, and the solution is obviously optical illusion. Yeah, the solution is obviously to go on this diagonal. So we're doing both things, threatening to attack and threatening to defend. We're not on time. We're not on time to defend, like straightforward stop that pawn, and we're not on time of straightforward help our pawn promote. But by threatening to do both, we're in time to, in the end, do one or the other, the one that black allows us to do. So if black just pushes this pawn, we 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 just go help our pawn promote. We're already in time to promote. So in these two moves, we're gonna do these two moves. And of course, if black spends a tempo with the king, we can spend a tempo with the king. So we're both gonna get a queen. It's gonna be a draw. And if black at some point decides to go after our c pawn, then we're one move closer to this pawn. So now taking the pawn will be a draw immediately because we're one step closer from the square, from entering the square. So here for black, it would only make sense to keep pushing, but we keep doing the same. It's getting closer at the same time to the square and helping our pawn. So it's a magical endgame. It's a draw. We're in time. We're in time. If we both get queens, it's going to be a draw, and we both do. So yeah, this is the most famous study of by Reti, and it's funny, but it shows a special important concept in endgames is the geometry of the king movement and how the king can do two things at the same time. And going back to this one, this is another famous study by Reti. I think not as famous as the other one, but still famous. Rook e1 doesn't win. Rook e3 and Rook e2 do win, which is amazing. So let's see what happens if Rook e1. And now black, again, these endgames, having the knowledge helps, because if you remember those rules of, knight jump, then I should do the check, then it makes your life easier. But even if you don't know those concepts or the theory we saw, you can always calculate it because it's always straightforward. Like, I mean, the plan for for the pawn is always to push it, helped by the king, and the plan for the opponent's king is to try and control the promotion square. So the plans are pretty straightforward. So black is going to push the pawn and the king. In general, you like to start with the pawn to keep the kings in opposition, so you're bothering white's king a bit more. And now we start outflanking, and boom! Look at this beautiful move, king e5. It's like, no, you're not going to outflank me. Not now. King d7? Nope. King d5. So this is the important defensive resource that black has. Is this beautiful opposition that if you keep doing that, king e7, black will keep doing king e5, and black will keep your king away. And if you do a move like king c7 here, saying, okay, you can't play king c5 because you lose the pawn, but now the king is really far, so now black is in time to get the draw. Just king d3, e3. If rook checks, okay, so we're in this position. If rook checks, I didn't have this line, so it's nice that you mentioned. If rook checks, I think we're in time to start running, right? I think we're in time to do this. And we're ready to push our pawn, because the rook is no longer on the e file. So our next move is going to be e3. Because if you go back to the e file, then I repeat the position. If rook e1, I repeat the position. And if you try to go with your king somewhere, some of these squares, then I'm ready to push. And e2 is going to come with a tempo. So yeah, it's good to know what to do if you're black too. Yeah, true. Yeah. Yeah, I know a bit about these endgames, so I'm pretty sure this is the way to play as black, and this is gonna be a draw. Um Alright. So the fun part here is E1 looked like the best square. The problem is the kings in opposition mean that white must spend a move here. White would love to pass the turn here. If this was black to move, white is happy. So 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 that's the reason why Rook E3 and Rook E2 are winning, because if a rook was on E3 or E2 right now, we would play Rook E1. We would play Rook E1. We would arrive to this position and it's black to move. You see what I mean? So I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. If the rook was on E3 or E2, then black, instead of keeping the opposition, black will go further because it's going to win a tempo against a rook. We're going to see that. But yeah, with the rook on E3 or E2, this keeping the opposition method doesn't work because we would play rook E1. And we would arrive to this position with black to move. So in this position, if we're forced to move as white, we'll play, let's say, rook e2. That's what I have here as main line. It's all about the tempos, yeah. And now king d4, king d3, rook e1. Hey, casting mate. Yeah, rook e2 is what we're saying right now, but we're not in time to outflank. And this is a draw. So let's go back and see what happens if we start with rook e1 in the original, sorry, with rook e2 or rook e3. So I have rook e2 as main line, but rook e3 is exactly the same. Now, pushing the pawn first makes sense. Again, we keep white's king as far as possible. If we start with the king, then white's king is already in, and it's going to be very easy. I don't even have this line in the study because this is very easy. We're already attacking the pawn. When you start attacking the pawn, then it's over. Then it's over. The pawn is lost very easily, which is something that I did not explain, although I usually explain it when I show this to the students. Is even though it's a race, white's king is much faster than black's king, because white's king needs to just move, and black's king needs, for each move of the king, you need one move of the pawn. You need to move pawn and king, pawn and king, pawn and king, or king and pawn, king and pawn, king and pawn. So for, you know, if the kings are really close to each other, then as black, you need to push the pawn first and bother this white's king as much as possible, because if you just start running, the king is going to be much faster than you, because you still need to push the pawn. So that's why I don't even have king f4 here, and actually I'm going to delete the line. So okay, rook e2. Let's see, e4. Hey John John, what's up? And now we spend the tempo. We play rook e1. And it's black to move. The opposition we mentioned, now it's black who's losing the position. Black can still try king e5, but then we play the winning move, king e7. And now regardless which side black goes, we're going to go the other side. So in fact, I have the move king d4 here, because if you just play king d5, then it's even worse. So white's king is going to be able to move forward now on the f or the d file. So for black, it only makes sense to start running up forward, I mean. But it's not in time. We're in time to outflank the other way. Yeah. And maybe, yeah, the main problem that black has is black can never attack a rook when the rook is on e1. because it needs to keep an eye on the pawn. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Now with the rook on e3, maybe you wonder, but isn't that losing a tempo to king f4? No, it's not, right? Why would you ever go rook e3? Well, if you know the solution, you would go rook e3 or rook e2. It's not really losing a tempo because now you play rook e1, which again is the square we finally want to go to. And now we know what to do. I mean, the king is not even bothering our king. So after pushes, we can start outflanking already. We don't even need the opposition anymore. We can really start outflanking now. We're in time. And if black says, oh, I'm going to bother you, well, you could do that with the pawn on e4, but not with the pawn on e5. I'm going to outflank you. You don't have king e5. So yeah, basically, when we put the rook on e3 or e2, the idea is we're going to play rook e1 later on. So isn't that beautiful? This is a composition, and it's beautiful. It shows something that's relevant to this endgame, but it's still a rare case. It's still a rare case, but it's good to know. It's good to know that these things exist and they might exist. That especially when you have the rook in front of the pawn, which is like the worst case scenario, you may need accuracy. You may need to be careful with the tempi. Okay, so that's that. Let's move on to the next chapter. Mind blown again. Hopefully I can get some games soon, otherwise we'll have to come back to the study again. Well, as I mentioned, we already covered the important concepts and now we're seeing rare cases, but I think for the 95% of the cases, you're fine with just the basic concepts. John Jung, changing topic here. Did you read Dlugi's response? I read his post. Yes. Yes. That's my answer. Okay. So now we're gonna see what happens with a knight pawn. Okay, I think the title of the chapter is example with knight's pawn. Okay. I don't have text for this, which I find confusing. So I'm gonna put a note. This is chapter 12. I'm always so updated. Yeah, sorry about that. Chapter 12. Write some text. Would be a good idea to include some text here to explain this. Oops. Okay, all good. Okay. Even though you're seeing the moves, okay, I didn't make any special effort to hide them. I think we can very clearly understand the first move, even though it's going to be a bit tricky because we're putting the rook in the way of our king. So we're going to have to be careful with how we move the king and the rook. Rook e3 easy. Okay, rook e3 is not the move. But as we know, when our opponent's king is in the perfect situation, a knight jump in front of the pawn, which is like right now, it's a knight jump in front of the pawn. That means that the king is controlling the 3 next squares the pawn needs to go through. That's the perfect king. So, as we said, whenever our opponent has the king in the perfect situation, we check. We check that king, and ideally we check from behind. So rook e3 is a check, yes, but the best check is from behind. Rook c7 check. Now let's imagine king. I have king b3 as main line, which is kind of funny because I would go king d3 if it was me. I would go king d3. But let's show both lines. Maybe I do this main line. Well, king b3 is tricky as well. So let's explore both, and then I will decide. The main problem here, it's not a problem, but the main thing that should concern us is that the rook is in the way. The rook is in the way for our king. So we need to be careful both with the king on d3 and the king on b3. How are we going to move our king? Because it may need to go in front of the rook. We'll see. But there's one thing to remember. That's why I also wanted to put some text here, because I have no text. The one thing to remember about the pawn, the knight's pawn, is that it is a really, really, really bad pawn. Like, in certain scenarios where if this was one file to the left, I think this is a draw. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Yeah, this is a draw. There's no time for outflanking, but because it's a knight's pawn, it's a win. So that's what this chapter is about. But I have no text there, so I really need to write this down and show it in a better way. So I'll try my best now explaining. Having a knight's pawn is bad news for black, because as we will see, being so close to the border, to the edge of the board, is going to be bad for this king, really bad. And we're going to see why. So we play the check, and now there are two main things to consider, either king b3 or king d3. Now, if king d3, which is a logical move, very logical move, staying away from the pawn, we do as we did the other time we did this check from behind, is we attack the pawn, so we force the king into c4, which is a worse position. Sorry. A worse square than the square where the position started. The king was on c3, now it's on c4, which is worse, and our rook is already behind the pawn. So now we're in time to outflank. So we bring the king. We're in time to outflank because we don't need to move the rook anymore. Sorry. We just outflank. We're in time. We're on time. Perfect. And it's a win. So that's why I have as main line the king b3 line, which may be a bit trickier because it's going to try to stop the outflanking. But yeah, king d3, it's just the usual, the good old rook behind the pawn and outflanking. Now, with the king in front, as John is saying, it's because you push the king either in front of the pawn, you push in front of the pawn on the a file. Well, I'm not sure if you're meaning exactly this, but yeah, the problem for this king is now it's confined to the a file or the b file, and the b file is a bad file because it's in front of the pawn, and the a file is a bad file because there are even some checkmating ideas, and definitely some Zugzwang ideas. So we're gonna see it now. We can't outflank as long as the king is on the b file. We can't outflank on the a file, I mean, but we can get our king close. Okay, so b4, and now shall we go that way as the arrows suggest for some reason, or shall we go king d6? I'm gonna put them in red. Now, if we play king c6 question mark, I really need some text for this. Maybe even split it into different chapters. I think I might have done this one like on a rush. Question mark means don't do that, yeah. And double exclamation mark means great defensive resource. King c4, going back with the king, exclamation mark, draw. Preventing king b5 and king d5. And if rook b7, b3 is a draw. And, if the king moves to one side, we're going to play king d3, most likely. So king c6 blunder, allowing king c4. So king d6 exclamation mark. And now after rook a2, king a2. Here I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think rook a7 check. Let me check briefly with the database. Yeah, rook a7 check also wins. So the rule still applies. Perfect king, we deliver a check. So the rule still applies. But in this instance, we're already in time to go with our king and show that, sorry, with a king on the a file, we can even afford wait for the mind blown. The last move you would do in this position, if you didn't know it works, king b4. King b4. But this is important to know how bad a knight's pawn is against a rook. Because even king b4, which is a move, very stupid move, you wouldn't do this if it wasn't a knight's pawn. It's not because of the ping. It's not because of the ping, okay? b2, if you pin the pawn, it's a draw. King a1, draw. So it's not that. Delete from here. But it's because it's on the a file. So now we do this check. And because it's on the a file and we got our king close enough, now it's forced to go in front of the pawn. This would obviously not work with any other pawn. The king would move to the left, threatening to promote, and good luck stopping the promotion. Actually, like that's why king b4. This is a move you only do because it's a knight pawn. Otherwise, you don't do that. Because your opponent may promote. You may not stop promotion. If this was in any other part of the board, you would not stop the promotion. But now, yeah. b2 rook c2, king b1 would have worked. Yeah. You think, John? I'm gonna put this line and delete it. You think this would work? What would you do here? King b3, king b3, king a1, and I offer a draw. I offer you a draw so you don't lose, actually. Because if you don't take my pawn here, you're gonna lose. So no, king b1 doesn't work either. Stop pinning that pawn. Okay. Which actually brings me to it brings me to this position, because after king b1, white is winning, but sometimes people mess up here, and I've seen people messing up really badly here. So I always trick my students here. Now we play king b3. For example, seems logical, right? So king c1 only move. Pawn is threatening to promote. We need to do something. It's threatening to promote with a check, so there's not much we can do. We need to deliver this check. And now the king must go to b1, otherwise black loses the pawn. Now, white to move and win. And this is where many people mess up here. And it's funny, because if we ask the database, this is gonna be, the database will be like, this move wins, this move wins, this move wins, this move wins, this move wins. But when I ask my students, they tell me rook c2. same as you, John. And then we get to that position that we already discussed after rook c2, king a1, and it's a draw. So there basically, I think there are like two moves that don't win here. I think there are like only two moves that don't win. Rook c2 and rook c3, which are basically the two moves that prevent the rook from ever going to the a file. Because if you do some other move on the c file, against king a1 you still have rook to the a file check and repeat. But rook c3 and rook c2 are the moves that don't win. If I bring up the database, yeah, it says like 20 moves that wins. Then Rook c2, rook c3. King a3 also draws. King a4 and rook c4 and king c4. And then rook c1 loses. There's one move that loses, but nobody ever played this move. Rook c1. Okay. But yeah, rook h7. Rook h7, easy peasy. Obviously, after king a1, you don't go rook h1. So you go rook a7 check. And now on the other side, rook a2, it does work. There's no more stalemate tricks. And you win. Okay. So so that's it. Yeah. So that's a knight's pawn, which is tricky. I mean, for the most part, if you're giving a position that you would win against another pawn, you will also win it normally against the knight's pawn. But we're seeing here an example that if it was the pawn here and these pieces here, it would be a draw. That means that we're not in time to outflank, but because it's a knight's pawn, we still have these tricks on the a file that gives us the victory, because eventually we're going to push the king in front of the pawn. So yeah, if any, I think the idea to remember from here is that a knight pawn is even worse for the losing side. And then we have the rook pawn, of course. Rook pawn, we already saw this chapter. We already saw the under promotion doesn't work. So again, I will probably put this chapter after the other one. Now we're gonna see stalemate in the corner. This chapter is called Stalemate in the Corner, and it shows an important defensive resource, which is in this position. Excuse me. We have a rook's pawn, but it's already ready to promote. The king is helping it, so this is a draw. However, because it's a rook's pawn, you still need to be careful to draw. So after rook b8 check, there's only one move that draws. And as the chapter title suggests, is to go to a1 for the stalemate trick. So there's no time for white's king to get closer. I can find an easy draw for white. Yeah, but it's black to draw. Like, yeah, for white it's very easy to draw. You can always sacrifice your rook for the pawn. But for black to draw, you have to play king a1. Notice that king a3 would lose to king c2. This is not very complicated, right? And if you promote to anything that's not a knight, you check and take whatever is on a1. And if you under promote to a knight, it's not a draw because it's a knight in the corner. We already discussed that the only way knight doesn't win, doesn't draw, is if it's in the corner. So this knight will eventually be lost. For example, after, let's say, king b1, we play rook, just a waiting move, and the knight is lost. Because if you move the king, it's checkmate. If you move the knight, you lose the knight. So, yeah. So, king a3 loses. Delete. So in this instance, it's important to go to a1. And now, if the rook stays on the b file, it's a stalemate. So after rook a8, we can go back to b2 or to b1. And yeah, rinse and repeat, draw. Okay, next chapter, similar situation, just the pawn is not on a2 yet. So it's black to move and draw. And I should probably include some text for this chapter as well. So I'm gonna add that note. Chapter 15. All right. Here we go. King b2, very well, Zheng. well, I'm showing the moves, I'm not hiding them, but yeah, king b2 is the move. It's important not to push the pawn because the kings are in opposition, and as we know, this shouldering is is a good idea for white. So if we play, instead of king b2, if we play a2 question mark, then the shouldering applies. Check, we're forced behind the pawn instead of, yeah, push pawn is horrible because we win like we just saw. Okay, so king b2, king b2. If I can play king b2, that would be nice. Yeah, king b2. And now, this is an important moment. White could try several things, but maybe a couple. If we play king d2, after a2 we're in the position we just saw previously. So the other thing that white can try is the check. Although I have king d2 there. But the other thing that white can try is rook b8 check. And now this is a very, very, very important moment. Yeah, king a2 is not a move you want to play, Jean-Jean, exactly. And here it's a very important moment. We have three legal moves: king a2, king a1, king c1. Two of them lose, and one of them draws. So this is, yeah, king a1 loses, Jean-Jean. So let's remember from the previous chapter. If I can move to the previous chapter, which apparently I can't. There you go. From the previous chapter, let's remember the reason the stalemate trick works, king a1, is because this king is far away. This king is on the d file. If this king was already on the c file, it would not work. Because you would play king d3, for example, king b3. But because it's far away, it works. So what I'm trying to say is, hey Bling, what I'm trying to say is after king b2, rook b8, going to the corner is too soon. Too soon because you still need to play a2. You're not ready for the stalemate trick. So if you play king a1 question mark, the king gets to the c file, and now a2, too soon. Here there's king b3 for one thing, but even easier is to just move the rook away, and it's checkmate on the next move. So yeah, king a1 too soon. You know that. So I think this is an important chapter if if we go into all the details, rarities, and so, because it connects with the previous chapter. We know the stalemate trick that can save the day, but that's what can get us confused from king c1, which, by the way, would be the most normal move that we would do if this was any other pawn on the board. If this was not a rook's pawn, the way you always play against this check is to go, away from the pawn, not in front of it, but still one file away, so you can go back, defend it if it gets attacked. So we would all play king c1. The only thing that can distract us from king c1 is thinking, oh, there's a stalemate trick, let's go to a1. So remember, with the pawn, if the pawn is not on the 7th yet, it's too soon to go for the stalemate trick. That's the thing to remember. So king c1, and yeah, it's gonna be after rook a8, we have time to go back, and it's a draw. And obviously king a2 also, it's also it also loses, and I find this it's funny because I know this technique by heart. So whenever I have this position, I play it by heart. There are many ways to win here, king b3 included, but this is a very simple one. Rook b1 check, rook b3, and it's checkmate next move. Not today, Blink. Not today. I'm not playing games today. Sorry. All right. So yeah, king c1, draw. And now, last but not least, are you ready to get your mind blown again, Flavio? I don't know. Maybe what I'm about to show you already saw it because there's sort of famous compositions, but we can't cover a rook versus pawn study without covering cases where the pawn wins against the rook. So pawn wins sometimes. Now, obviously, it's a very rare case. So this is a very well-known study, maybe. Composition, of course, if you can take the rook. Without taking the rook, sometimes the pawn wins. Obviously, the only way that the pawn will win is by getting a queen. And so this kind of position, which is rare, it has to be very particular. It's when the rook has no way to prevent the promotion. So here we have such a scenario. It is black to move, right? It is black to move, otherwise we would just promote. And black can't stop the promotion. So we're gonna see. It's an interesting puzzle because the puzzle could start probably after rook f6 and say why to play and win, let's say. But it's funny, the puzzle starts here, it's black to play and black loses. But winning with queen versus rook ain't easy. We already discussed that today. We already discussed queen versus rook. So when I publish the video of this stream, you can rewind and go there, because I showed the one thing you need to know of queen versus rook, and you're gonna win 100% of the time. So okay, black to play and lose. So black to play and try not to lose, but still gonna lose. The only move, obviously, is rook f6 check, because the pawn is about to promote. We don't have rook c5 because the king controls. We don't have rook f8, so rook doesn't have either way to control the promotion square. So we do a check. Logical. Now, if the king moves to e5, which is stupid, we would go rook c6, and that's it. If the king goes, oops, okay. If the king goes to d7, which I have covered in the study, I assume what I have is rook f1, but let me show the moves. Yeah, just rook f1. And because the kings are in opposition, even if you promote, we have check, check, and take. It's a draw. Let me put that this is a draw. And if king c5, we also go rook f1 and rook c1 next, and it's a draw. It's a draw if white is careful. Yeah. So okay, going to d7 doesn't work. Going to e5 obviously doesn't work. It's rook c6, we lose. So we have to go king d5. Now, whenever we enter the c file, the rook will go to f1, ready for rook c1 check, rook takes c8. So the only way will be to do this, I think they call it like zipper technique, where you go all the way on one side and then you go all the way back on the other side of the c file, because you're trying to avoid the c file. If you go to the c file, the rook will use this blue path. I would love to see you mate Stockfish with queen versus rook. We already discussed the topic of playing queen versus rook against an engine. So rewind this stream and yeah, that would be interesting to do one day. By the way, since we're taking notes, next day I'm gonna have to prepare material. Rook and pawn versus rook. We're gonna do this next week. Rook and pawn versus rook. Um, so I hope you're all here for that, because that's the single most important endgame you need to know. But other than that, thanks for the suggestion, John, because someday we're gonna do queen versus rook versus stockfish. And that could be cute. I need to prepare. I need to prepare against that for that. Like I put a random position and it is mating 33. There are some mating. Oops. How did I do that? There are some mating 42 positions. Yeah. Okay. So now that we draw the arrows, it's pretty clear what we're going to do. But let's put it on the board, because black can only check. Black can never access the C file or the F8 square. So we do that. And now there's no room for rook F1 and rook check behind. So we keep checking. Now we go back. We keep checking. King B7. And black resigns. I mean, black can resign or try rook F1. And after this, try the checks. But we have these two files, the A and B files, to get close to the rook and win. And this leads us to the last chapter, which is a very, very, very famous study, very famous study that if you did never see before, it's actually pretty cool. So it's another situation where the pawn beats the rook. But it's a tricky one. It's a tricky. It seems very similar to the previous one. It seems like, oh, we have this zipper technique. We can go back. We can go down and avoid the checks. Then enter the C2 square. Like it seems like, after rook d6 check, we can do that. But then there's a certain trick, and then there's a counter trick. So this is beautiful, because when and there's some story here. When this composition was published for the first time, the solution was this: we go with the king like this. We go all the way to c2. Black can't stop the promotion. White wins. So it was white to play and win. But then a resource was discovered that we're gonna see, and the composition was republished, saying black draws, black to play and draw. So there's a way for black to draw. And then Saavedra, which is the final author of this composition, said, no, it's a win. It's a win because of this, which is actually a very, very nice trick in the end. So if you never saw this, you're gonna enjoy this. Maybe even get your mind blown. So after king b5, we do the check. Again, we can't go to the background. We can't control the promotion square in any way, because the king. Sorry about that. The king and the pawn are always controlling those squares, so we have to keep checking. Again, the king never wants to enter the C file because of rook down, and not only we don't win, we lose. So delete this. So we continue king b3, rook check, and now we can go king c2, because now the rook can't go in behind. So originally the puzzle would stop here. It was like, okay, black can't stop promotion, white wins. But black can try this very nice trick, rook d4. Because now, if we promote, rook c4, boom, it's a draw. It's a draw because if we don't want to lose the queen, we have to take the rook, and it's a stalemate. And why can't we play king c2 if he played rook d1? In which position? Oh, here. You mean here? Yes, you're right. You're right. It's gonna be the same as the puzzle. It's gonna be the same. You're gonna look for the same trick. But yeah, it's the king c3 or let me delete. Once the king is on b4 or b3, um, it already works for white. Yeah, it's gonna lead to the same position. What you should not do is do it here, right? But yeah, once you're close enough, you can do it. Yes. So here you can do king c3, or you can wait one more and do king c2, which is it's both. They're both gonna lead to this position with rook d4. Correct. And here, if you promote to a queen, there's this trick, which is an immediate draw. And if you under promote, you're like, okay, black has a rook, so why would I under promote? But if you under promote, it has to be under promote to a rook. But so this is funny because it's one of the funnest situations ever. It's rook, king and rook versus king and rook, but it's not a draw. It's not a draw thanks to the situation of this king. So this rook is threatening checkmate. And this rook has no checks. There's no way to check. So there's only one move. This king can't escape. There's only one move that prevents the checkmate, and it's rook a4. And then you play the most beautiful double attack ever. King b3 threatens the rook and checkmate. And again, the black rook has no checks. And white wins. Mind blown, if you never saw it before. Um, beautiful. No wonder people believe this was a draw, because one would never think of under promoting here. Like, I mean, the opponent has a rook. In who can conceive that king and rook versus king and rook is not a draw? But yeah, amazing. Amazing. And this is one of the most beautiful puzzles I've ever seen. And it's nice that you have that final counter trick in the end, because then you can say why to play and win. By the way, if you go up here, king b7, then rook d7 is an immediate draw. Okay, so I think with this we covered all the cases. We covered all the rook versus pawn scenarios. I hope you can use them in your games. I hope it helps you solving other more complicated puzzles and pawn races. And yeah, that's all I wanted to show today. And it's been already long, so I think I'm gonna stop here the stream. Most beautiful being the queen going round 6 times. I shared. Yeah, I mean, they're very beautiful studies out there. But yeah, we covered everything about rook versus pawn. Next week we're gonna go over the single most important endgame you need to know after king and pawn versus king, which is rook and pawn versus rook. And we're gonna see Lucina, we're gonna see Philidor, we're gonna see first rank defense, we're gonna see Kling and Horwich, we're gonna see long side, attacking, defensive resources. It's gonna be a lot, but very, very, very important stuff. And we may use some more days for that, because it's very important. Most important is king and pawn versus king. Yeah, I agree with that. But we're going to assume that we all know king and pawn versus king. Maybe someday we will do it. I want to go over all the theoretical endgames, so yeah, one day we will do it. No, thanks, Joey, but I'm right finishing the stream, so thanks, but I'll go out of the room. Or actually, I mean, I could keep streaming, but no, I think it's been long enough. Fabi won his game, almost to Rook endgame. Cool. Okay, let's quickly look at that game before finishing the stream. But yeah, I think I'm done for today. Let me watch broadcasts. By the way, great game, Tihan today. US Chess Championship. So Fabi won against who was he playing against? Oh, Moradiabadi. Cool. Oh, but it's not an endgame. Okay, I see some draws over there. I see many draws today. Almost. Right. So, oh, I guess I clicked the wrong one. No, I clicked the right one. Oh yeah, I don't know why it loaded the other one. King G7 here, and white resigns. Yeah, King G7 is. So there was no knight f5 here? Ah, because the rook was on f5. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes press a... Yeah, I'm sure about the drink. Thanks. Have fun with Conan. I sometimes press a button and my PC write all messages I have sent. Okay, so that's what happened there. Speaking of tricks, my next blog post, I decided, well, we voted on Discord, and I decided my next blog post on leeches is going to be about dirty tricks. I don't know when I will write it because many times I say this week I'll write it, so I'm not gonna commit to anything. But you can expect that post happening soon this month, I suppose. It's gonna be fun. Anyway, thanks everybody for being there. Um, I hope this helped going over all these rook versus pawn cases, understanding it better. Some other day we'll go over queen versus pawn and knight versus pawn. I think those three are very important. But they're probably a next level. Yeah. So speaking about endgames, and you know, I agree with John that king and pawn versus king is the most important endgame to know. What I want to do, and I will probably organize this, you know, after doing these different streams covering specific topics, I'm going to do some kind of, how do you say, like a career path for endgames. I don't know, there's a better name for that. But yeah, I want to cover all the theoretical important endgames and put the videos in some logical order. And by logical order, I mean, what's the level 0? Because this is like a series of endgames from 0 to hero. That's the idea. So anybody can benefit from it. So I think the 0 level, the level 0 would be being able to checkmate, like king and queen versus king, or king and two rooks versus king, king and rook versus king. You know, that's the level 0. Or king, as John says, king and queen and rook versus king. Okay. So to me, level 0, endgames level 0 is, you know, just being able to, like, being able to deliver checkmate when you have material to deliver checkmate. Not even a joke. Yeah, the ladder mate or the lawnmower mate, those kind of things. For example, for me, knight and bishop, king, knight and bishop versus king is not level 0. I think that would be level 2 or something like that. For me. Or level 1 maybe, and two knights versus pawn level 2 or level 3. But yeah, level 0, the basic checkmates up to maybe king and two bishops versus king. That would be the basic, the very basic. Then we have level 1, like endgames level 1 would be king and pawn versus king, which is already a broad topic. If especially if you're a beginner, there are certain cases, like different cases to explore. It's already something to study. And then on the next level, we're gonna start having things like rook and pawn versus rook. That's already a new level. Rook and pawn versus rook, which we will see next week. And then I think after that, we would have rook versus pawn. I think what we saw today is not necessarily more advanced because it's not more complicated than rook and pawn versus rook, but I think it's less important because it's not as often that you have it. I think rook and pawn versus rook is more important because you have it more often. So yeah, next week we will see that rook and pawn versus rook. But yeah, I intend to keep covering different theoretical things, sometimes more for beginners, sometimes more advanced, but eventually put them all together so they make sense. Okay, thanks guys for being there, and I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we will probably do tactics. Just before I leave, let me. How about things like two connected pawns that cannot be taken by a king? Yeah, I mean, um, there are many topics. So, and I have already many put in studies. So I have a lot of material. So I will never run out of material to show. Um, like we saw rook versus pawn, but I have material for rook versus two pawns. I have rook versus three pawns, which is like one of the most complicated studies I have. Um, then I have a lot of stuff, and we will go over a lot of stuff of just king and pawn versus king and pawn. Like king and pawn versus king and pawn, king and two pawns versus king and one pawn, king and two pawns versus king and two pawns, king and three pawns versus king and two pawns, and so on. And those are more or less basic. I think most of them, especially pawn versus pawn, both if they're blocked and if they're not blocked, like pawn races, I think they're probably more basic than the ones we're seeing with rooks. Will you go over how to win with full boards from starting position? No. Okay, so I wanted to show the calendar before I leave because we have some events this week. Tomorrow we will do tactics most likely, and on Thursday we will do Bundesliga most likely. Although I'm still pending on how when we're gonna play our Backhouse World Championship match, so schedule may change. But very importantly, on Saturday morning, if I'm able to show the calendar, give me a second, because my Discord is not working. You know what? Maybe I can just say it. Oh no, never mind. It seems to be loading. Give it a second. Yeah, Tihan is playing this tournament. He's playing amazing. It's valid for norms, for GM norms and IM norms. So I'm assuming he will probably get an IM norm in this tournament. We will see. And so we're gonna cover that on Saturday morning. It's gonna be very early here. I think it starts around 7 a.m. But I may start streaming. It's classical chess, so I can start streaming at 8 or 9. Whenever. My plan is to become so good at chess that I don't need to know endgames. That's a good plan. Okay, so here's the plan for this week. I think you can see it on the screen. This was rook versus pawn, and as I said already, tomorrow probably tactics, Bundesliga on Thursday, and on Saturday we have the Fairness International Autumn. We're gonna be covering Tihan's game at least. It's the round 8 out of 9, so already very decisive. And because it's classical, we probably have time to go over past games and some interesting stuff. I think it's going to be fun. And yeah, that's all from me. Tomorrow tactics, Violatic shared a tactic on Discord that seems quite interesting. That's going to take us probably, I don't know, half an hour or 1 hour. And yeah, Bundesliga football stream, no. Chess Bundesliga. Yeah. Okay. Have a great day, guys. Thank you for being there. See you tomorrow. Okay, let's rate someone. Let's rate someone. Mm-mm. We also got a couple rates today. Let's give some love back. That's it. No more streamers. Well, who should I rate? EOS Chess Champs. EOS Chess Champs. Niemann. Rosen is live? Oh, I don't see him here. Okay, I'll rate Rosen. Thanks, John John. That works. I trust you that he's live. I didn't check. Okay, he's live on your Twitch. Okay, if he's live for you, that's okay. Okay, guys, I'll see you tomorrow for some tactics. It's gonna be fun. Have a great rest of your day. I'm gonna start coding a Discord bot for live chess broadcasts. More information on my own Discord. See you. Bye bye.